Alrighty. Okay, so let's see here. Nobody in the chat. Yeah, that's all right. It'll probably take a little bit. I started this late and I didn't post it. So, not surprising. That's all right. Let me see here. I should probably share this. That way, those people who want will know about it. I'll go ahead and just tweet it. I think that will work. So, let's see. Okay. Hey, Animus, how you doing? Hey, Animus, I just sent you an invite if you so want to join. Because this is a Patreon hangout, so you're welcome to join. We're just going to be going. I'm going to be going over some viewer comments, then we can talk about those comments and then answer any questions that people might have, or you know, just see what happens from there. I think this is going to be a lively discussion. So let me see. So let me see if I can share my screen. Where do I find that? Last time you posted a link in chat. Let me see. I sent it to your email. The one at Yahoo. I sent to the one at Yahoo. So check that one. I think is your name at Yahoo. And if you have any problems, let me know, and I'll just. Yeah, because I don't really want to post it in the chat because then random people will pop in. And this hangout this time is set apart for just my Patreons. I mean, I appreciate all the people who view my channels, but they can do that on Saturdays. This Wednesday is just for you guys. So let me see. I'm going to. Well, I guess what I'll do is I will just wait. Let me see. That works. Holy crud. Okay. Let me see this. And whoops. And let me see this one. There we go. All right. Let's see. Okay. All right. Okay. So while you're looking for that, hey, Comedic Witch, how's it going? So in the meantime, what I'm going to do is just kind of go over some of the comments. These were some comments that I had in exchange with people on YouTube. And we're just kind of go through them and talk about them because it's just so ridiculous. Where is it? Let me see. There it is. There's the comments. Now let me see. I have to reshare this. Where the hell? There it is, right there. All right. So hopefully you guys can see this. Let me see. Hey, Cece, how's it going? Ah, she misses David. Okay, so let's see. So this is a comment that I got. Okay, that's fine, Comedic. Let me see. So these are some of the this is a particular comment that I got from this person I was having a back and forth with. Their name is Sylvia Ross, and basically what it is they believe that the Holocaust was a pagan ritual. Your message hasn't set up Yahoo yet. I need to grab a quick break, so I'll check in when I get back. No problem. See you later, Animist. So let me see. Okay, so she says, HH, I'm surprised you have not run across the blood sacrifices before in this your long career as an occultist. You seek to put occultism on a rational, humanistic basis. But remember, the word occultism comes from the occult, which means that which is hidden. So this comes from a mindset of a person who automatically assumes that people who study the occult or paganism are automatically somehow inferior or lesser than human beings. They don't understand it, but that is essentially what they are saying, because they are saying you seek to put occultism on a rational, humanistic basis. Yes, everyone, I hope, would be on a rational, humanistic basis. So, yeah. Did you know the reason that blood sacrifices aren't practiced much anymore, as you and your guest observed? The reason that they have gone out of favor is because of the effect on society that Christ's blood sacrifice has on the cross, has had on the human psyche. So, first of all, animal sacrifice is not done in many cultures anymore because, well, it's a waste. It's a waste of food. It's a waste of sacrifice. So there's many reasons why animal sacrifices are not done anymore. And also the whole concept of an animal sacrifice, as I had mentioned in this previous video before, is completely, especially in the European tradition, misunderstood. You are sacrificing an animal for food. You are understanding it as nourishment. That's what a sacrifice is. So these people who were sacrificing to the gods were offering this food to the gods. That's what they were doing. And yes, nowadays we don't need to do that. We don't need to sacrifice animals anymore. There are some cultures that do, and there are some traditions that do. But for the most part, in the research that I've done into witchcraft, and I'm talking about European witchcraft before somebody throws some other word in there, I've never come across it. So that's it. So let me see. So many occultists who use blood that I knew when I was into shamanism witchcraft, of course, she's a devotee of Mr. BS, did self-cutting using their own blood. Yes, there are people who do use their own blood, especially if you wanted to consecrate runes, for example. That's a good example of it. I don't use any blood in any of my rituals, but then again, I don't, everybody is different. When blood is used in ritual, it is used to feed demonic forces. Bullshit, that's your opinion. So that's who's responding when an occultist uses blood. No, it's a way of creating a bond between you and the object. That's the whole point of it. Such as, for example, anybody who talks about the blood brother or a blood sister or a blood relative, it is making something a part of you. It is connecting it to you. Because yes, blood is considered to be the life energy, the life force. Demons are the earthbound souls left to the Nephilim who died in Noah's flood. Okay. Sure. Okay. Uh-huh. The Nephilim were the offsprings of the mating between fallen angels and human women. Okay. Not even going to bother commenting on that. Nephilim were the giants spoken of in the Bible and in all ancient mythologies. The idea of giants from mythologies, who knows how they came about. But there's no evidence for any giant who actually lived. If they did, then somebody has gone around and meticulously taken away all evidence whatsoever. All evidence. But the earthbound Nephilim can present themselves as gods and goddesses. Again, that's your fucking belief. And they are attracted to blood because they are attracted to the human body. Remember, they are earthbound spirits without a body. So they seek to possess ours. That's why the blood is attractive to them. These spirits eventually demand sacrifice from their human followers, both animal and human. And this situation still exists today. The Muslim beheadings are human blood sacrifices, for example, as in the Muslim holiday of Ashura, in which Shia Muslims beat themselves until they draw blood. In the Bible, when Elisha challenged the prophets of Baal and they were losing started cutting themselves in order to help from their demon god. Okay, first of all, it doesn't have anything to do with Muslims. Muslims are just, the ones who do that are fucking insane. They're just sick. There's no other explanation for that. They believe that they are ridding the world of the infidel. It's kind of like how Christians think that they're ridding the world of evil by condemning pagans and witches and occultists. It stems from the same thing, and you just don't see it because you're stupidly blind. Let me take a look at the chat. We're here, but YouTube is being farty. Oh, okay. Let me see. You there? Okay. What do you mean by being farty, Animus? Let me know, and maybe I'll try resending it again. Cutting was a sign of shame. What the fuck did they learn? It didn't show up yet. Okay. Hey, Animus, let me send it off again to you. And okay, so I sent the invites out again. So check it again, and if you still have a problem, let me know, and I will post it in the chat. Let me see. Okay, so let's get back to this ridiculous. Okay, so this is what the occult is all about. Don't be naive. Get out of it while you still can. Accept Christ as your Savior before it's too late. Oh no! These people, I tell you, they are so annoying. So annoying. So then I responded back to her, and then she commented back. So she claims that the Holocaust was a pagan ritual of sacrifice. Whatever. Okay, so I said the Holocaust was a horrible atrocity and not a single life should have been lost. It was not a sacrifice to any gods, past or present. She says the Holocaust certainly was a sacrifice of 60 million Jews based on religion. The Nazis were pagans worshiping the ancient Norse gods, and the monotheism that Jews helped bring into this world opposed this. The Bible was written by Jews. This is why Jews were hated by the Nazis. And here are a few videos on the occultism and paganism practiced by the Nazis. But I thought this was a well-known fact at this point. Actually, Sylvia, no, it's not a fact. The Nazis used a lot of Nordic symbolism for national pride. The hatred that was propagandized or spread by especially the Nazi Party was to create a scapegoat and create a focus of hatred. And unfortunately, the Jews have often been this focus of hatred. I don't know exactly why. It's just been that way, and it's unfortunate. But that's what they played off of. They played off of, first of all, after World War I, the economy of Germany was in the shitter. There was a lot of the economy was just collapsing, and they were pretty much really licking their wounds from the war. And so the Nazi Party especially said, well, look at these foreigners who came to our country and are hoarding all the money and all this stuff. And that's what it was. So it was not an occultism. It was just a way to scapegoat and to blame the horrible Jews. And so that's one of the reasons why they gathered them up, put them in concentration camps, and then eventually um, uh, tried to commit genocide against. Well, they did commit genocide against them, but tried to wipe them out entirely, basically. And yeah, it's a horrible time in our history, but it doesn't have anything to do with occultism. Even if the Nazis did practice occultism or thought they did, again, there is nothing in any occult books about trying to sacrifice people to do something. I mean, this is complete ludicrous bullshit. It's so annoying. And then she gives me 2 links to 2 videos about Nazi and occultism, which I haven't watched yet, but I've seen various programs on it, and they're usually pretty crappily done. They're not very well researched, and there's nothing linking the genocide of people to what the Nazis believed, as in for a religious purpose. It was all political and for propaganda and for spreading hate. That's what it was. So the next one, because I talked to her about this, I said, would you mind pointing out exactly where in Satanism, occultism, or witchcraft that human sacrifice is used in any sort of ritual, and for what purpose? So I'm referring to even if the Nazis did practice occultism, that doesn't have anything to do with it. And she says, I thought I just did. So basically, I'm asking her for proof that there's some kind of an occult ritual that involves genocide. And she turns around and says, well, it is proof in itself. And it's not proof in itself. You're trying to prove your point by pointing out the point again. That's circular logic. It doesn't make any fucking sense. This is really annoying. Anyhow, let's see who's in the chat. Hey, Mary, morning. How's it going? Hitler was a Christian. Yes, he was a Christian. Hitler was a Christian. He killed non-Christians. Motherfucking. I know he did. He also rounded up gays, gypsies, other German citizens who were sympathizers, who were protecting people or doing objections to it. So yeah, I mean, he basically killed anyone who opposed him. And let me see. Okay. Okay, so she says that the evidence is already the evidence that she gave, and that's supporting the claim. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay. So she says, I thought I just did a Jewish Holocaust in the modern era, the Nazi pagan government of Germany. No, they were Christians. And of course, you know about the others. The Mayan sacrifices, for example, have been the object of attention in recent years since 2012 attention to the end of one of the Mayan calendar cycles. What the Mayan people did in South America doesn't have anything to do with European witchcraft or Western occult traditions. That's, again, I'm not denying that cultures have committed animal sacrifices. I'm just saying that nowadays, the modern pagans and modern occultists, we don't do that. And there is no ritual. It's like people don't understand that there is a scope of occultism. It has a scope to it. And just because something, how can I describe this? There's a scope of occultism, and certain things fall within that scope, and that's it. So anything that falls outside of that scope, you can't call it occultism. It's something else. Stalin and his imitators basically read Nietzsche, looked at history, and came to the wrong conclusion. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right, Animist. Let me see. Okay. Regarding the purpose, occultism and witchcraft have demonic entities as objects of worship and communion. No, they fucking don't. These people are deluded into believing that demonic entities are gods. Actually, no, you are deluded in that way. That is what you believe. The people who practice, like, for example, who pray to Zeus or pray to Athena or pray to Kernos or whatever, some of them may believe that that is an actual entity, that is an actual being, and that's who they are praying to. They are not praying to a demon. They're not doing that. That is what you believe they are doing. They believe that they are praying to their deity. You say that they are praying to a demon. That is your perspective. That is your opinion. And the only basis for that is your opinion. It's not even in the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible does it say anything about specific gods being any kind of demons. The only thing it says is that there are false gods and that yours is the true God and all the other ones are false gods, false idols. I also have to educate these people on their own fucking religion. Let me see. Okay. What are demons? Let me see. So demons are disembodied spirits of the Nephilim that were killed in Noah's flood. It's going on about the Nephilim again. I'm not even going to read that. Let me see. And then I said, if we are going to blame casualties of wars, sacrifices, then there's thousands upon thousands of lives that have been lost as a sacrifice, mostly from Christian and Muslim armies. How would you explain this? So in this sentence, I wasn't belittling the fact that the SS was going around committing genocide against these people. I was pointing out that if you were going to say that the genocide of the Jewish people during the Holocaust was a pagan ritual, then why not look back in history for all the people who have been killed in wars and claim those to be sacrifices of whatever that she believes that they are. And she completely misses that point. She says, the deliberate and targeting killing of 6 million Jews over a 5-year period can hardly be defined as some collateral damage. That wasn't what I was saying. And I can certainly explain the carnage from some Christian and all Muslim armies. I'm assuming that the Christian armies you refer to are the activities of the Catholic Church during the Inquisition, the Catholic Church of the Middle Ages, and Islam, both past and present, are both what I refer to as megacults. The megacult is a cult that has political and military characteristics in addition to the regular 6 characteristics of the smaller cults. I've found from some hard-earned experience that a basic cult consists of 6 characters, and then she goes on to lead the cults, describe the cults. So what I was saying was, for the most part, most of the people who have committed wars, especially in Western society, have been Christian or Catholic. So she completely missed the point. Then she says that her description of the cult basic practice of she did. This was the very first comment that she did. Was what she tried to say was that Wicca and witchcraft is a cult, and it's not a cult. The definition of a cult is completely different from this. I tell you, it's annoying as hell. You know what? I don't even want to go through this anymore. I'm getting fed up with it. So I'm just going to stop it. Stop sharing. I'm not going to stop the. I'm not going to stop the Hangout. I'm just going to stop going over that because it's just annoying. Let me see. So how is everybody doing? What's going on? How is everyone? I know Animus was trying to get in here. Animus, did you still want to join? Are you having problems? What's going on? Let me know. And I'll post the link in the chat. And Rays, how's it going, Rays? Okay, so you're cleaning. Okay, cool. And CC, so yeah. So I guess kind of going along the lines of talking about what we were talking about last week, which was atheist, how I am an atheist and a witch, and how that works together, and how I view divinity, and how I view deities, and a lot of the supernatural. I think along those lines, I think I also need to describe how I view, especially magic, the magical world, and a lot of the various practices that other people practice. The way that I approach it, and I think someone who watches my videos may have been offended by something I said because they went on to do a video on ghosts and basically proving that ghosts exist. And let me just say, that's not my goal. I'm not here to prove that ghosts do or do not exist. I am simply stating that I don't believe in them, and I just don't have any evidence for it. But it's can also be said that there's no evidence that there isn't ghosts. So I'm not into going in and picking apart people's beliefs and judging their beliefs. That's not my point. My point is, witchcraft is a practice. Atheism, what? No, no, Cece. Atheism is the lack of belief in a theism, or a deity. It stems from the word theism. So you have monotheism, one deity. You can have duotheism, two deities. Polytheism, pantheism. So those terms, meaning, I think it's Greek. I'd have to look up the origin. But atheism is just, there is no, it's like an antithesis. It's atheistic. There is no deity. That's just what people believe. So atheism is not a religion. People call it a religion, but no, it's just a lack of belief in deities. That's all it means. Yeah, that's okay, Cece. Yeah, it's Greek. Yeah, thanks, Cece. So that's how I that's how I perceive it. So I've never experienced ghosts, so I don't believe in ghosts. I understand that there are people who do believe in them because of basically what they've experienced. And I'm not here to challenge that. I'm just here to give a very rational approach to a belief system. That's my whole purpose. If you find my beliefs and my opinions about things opposed to yours, that's, well, good. I mean, I that's healthy. I think that that's good. I'm just, what I do is, my beliefs are based upon my experience and my beliefs, and that's what I try to express in YouTube. So that's what I do. Let me see. Any other Greco-Latin roots you need clarity on? I probably know them. Oh, okay. Well, that's good to know, Cece. That's mighty fine coffee. Okay, let me see here. So yeah, so that is how I perceive things. I'm not out to try and make fun of people who believe in things that are different from myself. Unless you're Christian, then I'm going to make fun of you. No, I'm just kidding. I understand there are people who believe in monotheistic deities, and for the most part, I respect that. But I know I do poke a lot of fun at, like, Bill Schnoblin and other people like that. Basically, if they come at me commenting on my videos, yeah, I'm gonna use everything within my arsenal to break down their argument and make them look like a fucking idiot. That's my point. uh, Animus says, what people call ghosts cover a whole range of phenomenon that are not necessarily a popular conception. Again, yeah, that's you drink coffee, you're a terrible human being. Rawr. You're ruining your body. Rawr. What? Okay, let me see. Um, so yeah, so people have different beliefs in ghosts, and yeah, there could be a whole gamut of going from anywhere from psychic phenomenon to actual spiritual entities. There, and everything in between. Again, that's, I'm not challenging those beliefs. I'm just saying that I've never seen credible evidence for it. It's the same thing with a deity. I've never seen credible evidence for it. That's all. So when it comes to certain things, again, it's sort of like if you can imagine a room. So let's say a room is 100 feet across. Beyond that room, beyond those walls, you don't know what lies beyond that, because that's all you can see. That's how I look at my knowledge. My knowledge is the extent of this room. Outside of it, I don't know. I don't know what's beyond it. I've never looked. I've never experienced it. So I don't have anything to say about it. So the only thing that I can speak on is what I've actually experienced. And that's it. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you people and bullshit you and make up some stories about something when it isn't anything that I've experienced. I think it would be disingenuous, and I think it would be misleading for me to do that. And I think that the people out there who have experienced certain things, maybe they need to take a look at it and analyze it. And is it an experience that they actually had, or is it something that they wanted to believe? That was my whole point of talking about that. Let me see. I do believe in ghosts and other paranormal activities, but I enjoy talking to skeptics as well. Yeah, exactly, Mary Morning. I appreciate that. I think that it is good. That's one of the reasons why I talk with Christians. Like I invited, I thought I was going to have another lady who I tried to get on my show before to talk about her belief in Christianity, and also even this person who left me this ridiculous comment about the Nazis. I actually invited her on, and I said, look, if you want to come on and talk about it, we can do that. Yes, I think it's very important to listen to people who have an opposed opinion to ours. If you just only talk to people who reinforce your own beliefs, you're limiting yourself. You actually want to talk to people who have different beliefs from yourself. At least that's what I believe. I realize that you wouldn't understand it unless you experienced it for yourself. Exactly, Mary Morning. Exactly. So your experiences have led and shaped your opinion about various things. And my opinion and my experience has shaped my opinion about certain things. And so you and I maybe have completely different experiences. And that's, of course, I mean, that's just the way, that's to be expected. People have different experiences. Um, so yeah, so when I take a look at especially occultism and magic, I take it from a very rational, uh, skeptical point of view. And that's just what I do. If something happens, unfortunately, oftentimes when stuff happens, there's no way I can really explain it. I mean, I can explain it. You can analyze the chain of events that caused a particular thing to happen. But as for trying to prove that it was magic that caused that to happen, yeah, you can't measure it. You can't put it under a microscope. You can't measure it. You can't weigh it. There's nothing you can do. It's just something happened and it worked in your favor, but you can't really you can't, you can't really you can't explain it. And that's how I look at magic. And yeah. So let me see. Sniper Boy. Exactly. Yes. When I had Sniper Boy on my show, when we were talking about those conspiracies, and I really wanted to understand why he believed in certain conspiracies and what led him to understand that. And I think it's good, even though I completely, I didn't believe him, but I wanted to understand his thought process. It's the same thing with people who believe in ghosts. You know, if they believe in ghosts, I'm curious why. What you led you to believe in ghosts, or what experiences you have that led it to it. And usually it's experiences that they've had, like they sensed it, or they seen it, or you know something happened that they couldn't explain. I mean, people don't have a belief in something without quote unquote good evidence for it. They're not just going to blindly believe. We don't like believe in unicorns just for the fact that they're unicorns. No, there's something that puts it there that makes us believe that way. And that's what I'm often fascinated by, is how people and why people believe certain things that they do. Your invite lever, but I'd love to join vocal chat. All right, let me see what okay, I'll post the link in here, Animist. But just to let people know, this is a Patreon only hangout, so I'm only letting the Patreons in because they're supporting me, and so I want to show my appreciation for this by having this hangout, and also by mentioning them in my videos and allowing them access to my videos 3 days before I release them, because I appreciate them helping me out, even if they, just help me out with $1 or $2. I really appreciate it. So this is for this time set apart for them. So I'm not just let anybody in. CC says, energy, all matter exists. It cannot be destroyed. Therefore, I believe the same on human spirit. I can't destroy, only changed. Yeah, and I think that is a common argument for a lot of people believing in spirits or ghosts and reincarnation. So yeah, I can agree with that. I don't think that it's exactly true, though. Um, Everything basically exists.
Huh.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, Animus? You're on, huh?
Ah.
Cool. Exactly true, though. But I hear an echo. Everything basically.
Hang on.
Sure.
I gotta mute this.
Sure. Hey, how's it going, Animus? You're on, huh?
Ah. Okay, I got the YouTube channel muted. I should not
Okay.
be making an echo.
Good. Yeah, sounds like it.
Okay.
So yeah. So let me just finish this point here. So because CC had mentioned in the chat that energy, all matter exists and cannot be destroyed. Therefore, I believe the same on human spirit. I can't destroy it, only changed. So I mean, I agree with that. I mean, depending upon, I mean, if you look at for example, the Great Expansion, of the Big Bang, as they call it, which is the theory that everything originated from one single point. So all matter, all energy in the entire universe, well, yeah, the known universe, was created at that moment, and everything is a part of that. So there is nothing that is really created or destroyed. But the energy, for example, if you have a wheel and you spin a wheel, you're using energy to spin that wheel. And the minute you stop spinning that wheel, you're no longer putting energy into it. Then the energy turns into potential energy. So yeah, I believe that all energy cannot be destroyed. But anyway, what do you think about that, Animist?
You're basically getting into the realm of physics, and then
Exactly.
you have to start talking about the nature of time and the transformation of substance to energy to information back and forth across the directions of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really big discussion, and it does have it does play into my personal perception of how some of the effects that people call ghost or psi or ESP or whatever can happen. But I'm not sure how to. I'm not sure how to break that down into a little discussion real quick. Maybe we can find a corner to nibble on and talk about certain particular.
Well, no. No. Yeah. I mean, I was just commenting on her comment, and yeah, I agree. I think it is definitely something that is outside of my realm. It's definitely outside of my comprehension to really explain it very well. But I mean, yes, I agree with her. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I believe in reincarnation, is because I believe that our afterwards. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, my belief in reincarnation also it interferes with my belief in an existence of spirits or ghosts. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay. I get what Yeah.
Yeah.
See, there's a thing about time that I think helps a lot of this make sense.
Hmm.
Is people think of time as linear. They also think of it as one directional, which is horribly wrong. But because time, everything that you're talking about makes much more sense if you see time as flowing in two directions and not being a straight line. And I think this is something that physicists have started to talk about, and it's something that I think is inherently wrapped up in occultism, is that a lot of these special abilities and special phenomenon, or uh, foresight and magic, involve dealing with time as having two directions. And a lot of these other effects that seem to skip across time are because time is not a straight line. Because, I mean, just from relativity alone, we know that there are no straight lines through reality. Everything is curved, everything is flowing. And so if you look at time as more of a coil made out of coils, like it wraps around itself, and then the wraps is like making a slinky out of slinkies. And so you have different times where things that seem to be many years apart, future or past, are actually very close, touching to each other. Does that image make sense?
Um, Again, we're getting into a
Just
really
just
complex area,
yeah,
but
it's a
actually,
huge thing.
no. Yeah, it is.
Oh,
But actually, no. I perceive time, human time, as a measurement. So from this moment to this moment there's a gap between that, and that is time. That is our form of measurement. So again, we're getting into a pretty complex area, but that's how I
yeah,
perceive time.
it may
Yeah.
be too big.
Yeah,
It may be a
exactly.
little too big for one hangout. But
Yeah, exactly. But
if you
but
think of
Mary,
a slinky,
hmm
okay, you are moving. If you're moving along the wire of a slinky,
hmm
at some point, you're you as you travel along the wire, you're actually very close to points on other coils of the wire, and it's possible that is this is theoretical, but it's possible that you may have more of an interconnection with something from another coil than you have with something that is farther back on your own on your own travel through the wire.
okay, I don't understand. Understand the analogy. So what exactly
Okay.
does the coil represent? Does the coil represent time itself, or does it represent something else? I don't
The
understand the analogy.
in this case, the shape of the slinky would represent the shape of time.
Okay, so the slinky is time.
Yeah, and
Okay,
so
so
you
what
travel
is the
along the wire.
okay, so what is the shape of the slinky? Is it the shape that it takes, or is it the coil itself that makes up the shape?
Oh, well, it's just it's thought experiment in dimensionality, that you can feel like you're traveling along a straight line, or that you're traveling along a sequence of events, but at certain times you may actually be closer to events, physically closer to events, just like a position on the slinky. We are closer to a previous coil or a future coil or the next coil of the slinky than you are to where you were in your travel along the wire itself. And so you could get perceptions or interactions that bleed across. I can't believe I'm trying to do this, but because it gets very close to the many worlds theory of reality from quantum mechanics. But basically you have the possibility that you may be closer to something that you passed by a long time ago. You may be closer to a century ago than you are to yesterday, because these coils seem to match up, have parallel moments.
Okay, all right. Okay, hold on, hold on.
And if that's too far out, we can just skip that. Because
Well, okay, hold on one second. It's not too far out, but I'm trying to get in your head and understand exactly what you mean by this, because
yeah,
you're talking in a rather abstract concept, which I'm
yeah,
having a hard time understanding. So let me just back up a little bit.
it's a lot
So
easier if
for
you can write pieces of paper, and make
okay, so,
diagrams.
okay. Okay, so for example, a coil, let's look, okay, say a coil goes around and it comes back around. It's a circle, right? It's a metal
Right.
circle that comes around, but it doesn't connect with the old one. It actually creates a new coil, comes back around 360, 359 degrees, and then starts up another degree of a next coil, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So okay, so it's creating like a coil creates another coil, a coil. So do you believe, for example, like let's say zero, you're born at the beginning, you go all the way around 359 degrees, and then you die, and then you create another coil? Is that what you mean because when you're talking about how I'm just is that a good understanding of what you represent a coil as a period of time, or I'm just trying to figure out if I'm
Basically,
understanding it.
it's a way of viewing time as cyclical and periodic. And if you think about it, every measure of time that you can make involves some kind of cycle or some kind of periodic motion or periodic phenomenon. And so basically, if you were to sort of graph them, uh, all measures of time would basically be one size or another of one of these coils. So you could see like a human lifetime as one coil,
Okay.
although given the various phenomena that are happening all the time, like the vibration of cesium atoms that are used to run atomic clocks, that's a very tiny excuse me. Sorry. So a cesium atom has a very tiny coil of time, and that's nested within, a larger coil of time, which is your cellular metabolism, which is nested inside a tinier or a larger coil of time, which is the day, the year, the lifespan of a human.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So I think I understand that coil analogy. So now let's back up.
Okay.
Now, how does this relate to the concept of reincarnation?
I personally am not convinced of the absolute or the coherent reincarnation of an entire person.
Okay.
I definitely see or have seen that aspects or bits of a person can echo across the coils.
Mm-hmm.
And so that certain parts of their awareness or certain phenomena or aspects of them may sort of skip across coils. One of the things that we have, this is a shamanism thing a little bit. One of the things we have in shamanism is that the dead become timeless. They become disassociated from their lifetime, but their lifetime still exists where it was. But because they have become part of the world of spirit, more or less, to be approximate, they can access or they can be accessed from other coils. And so this is why you have ancestral veneration and ancestral influences, because outside of a person's lifetime, they oh boy, here we go into physics again. They become free in relativity to be accessed by magic, trance work, whatever. And so someone from the future, or theoretically someone from the past, could access their entity, could access their spirit. So they basically become something of a dispersed free agent across the slinky, as it were, along with so many others. But they still exist in their own lifetime. And that's a classic shamanic culture concept, put in terms of modern physics.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now, so how does that relate to ghosts and stuff like that?
Okay. So, I hate the word ghost because that covers what is to me at least a dozen different things, but it's the word.
I'm just trying to simplify it for the discussion rather than sit here and rattle
Yeah.
off 100 names. I'm just going to call it ghosts because I think you and I both know what that means, right?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's the common term.
Okay.
But so a lot of, okay, let's just pick ancestral ghosts. You get a vision of your grandfather. You're in a time of need, and you get a vision of your grandfather or your grandmother, and they comfort you, or they give you advice, or they do something on your behalf in the spirit realm, which is a thing we do. Okay, this is a function of people that are, or of entities that are not focused in time anymore, not focused in time regarding your reference. So in that way, you may commune with them as a ghost, or you may have sensory experiences of them as a ghost, but they are actually accessing you from their own, from a state of being out of time. And so they aren't really there. The ghost is, that kind of ghost is not really there. And yet you can experience them because of that sort of being free across the coils of time. That's as close as I can come to merging the physics with this shamanic spirituality.
That's fine. That's fine. So since the dawn of time, every single human being, creature, all have this type of an ancestor spirit, or is it only certain ones?
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. If you look at relativity physics, and this is hard physics, Einsteinian relativity, everything that ever has existed or ever will exist always exists within its own reference frame. And they get into the equations of what happens if you shoot around a black hole, or the way special relativity causes your time frame to shift. And that's just physics. But in order for it to work, everything has to exist always within its time frame. And so in the occult or shamanism or spiritualism, the idea is, can you access the information of their personal reference frame? And the overwhelming answer seems to be either yes sometimes, or sometimes it surprises you, and there's a bit of warped weirdness to that.
Okay, let me repeat the question.
Okay, I'll try again.
Okay,
I'll take another stab at it.
That's okay. So does this, because you mentioned ancestor spirits or grandfather spirits, so do all creatures and humans have this ancestor spirit that continues on, or is it only specific, or is it only certain people? Like, so it's kind of a two-part question. First of all, do you believe that animals spirits exist, or do you believe just human spirits exist? And then of those spirits, do you believe that all of them essentially still carry on in this type of a spirit, or do you believe only certain ones do? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that question makes sense, and that'll help me. That'll help me sort it out. Basically, every information energy event, every moment in time, every creature, every interaction always exists where it was. It always exists within its frame of reference. And so the question is not whether it exists, because that's hard physics, but whether you can access that information. And that's the art. That's the trick.
Okay. So, all right. So since the dawn of time, these spirits exist. So we have a whole shitload of spirits all around us all the time.
Yeah, well, past and future. They're in their reference frame. They're in their own time frame. And the question is not whether they exist, because they're all where they are. They're in 2000 BC or 200,000 BC, or they're in, 200,000 years in the future. So it's not a matter of whether they are there, because they're all displaced throughout history, and the physical material continues to transform and create new forms. The question is whether you can commune across that gap, and when or how you can commune across that gap to gain a perception or a communion with a particular individual or kind of event that occurred in its own reference frame. So Earth 2,000 years ago, can you go there in your mind? Does that make sense?
It doesn't make sense to me, but I mean, I'm just trying to understand your perspective of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just trying to understand your perspective.
Yeah, and
So
it's
you
not a simple one. It's not a simple one. Shamans aren't famous for being simple. We're famous for being so bizarre, being so bizarre and complicated that we seem insane, even if we're not insane.
right? Yeah. Okay. So you also believe that spirits in the future exist in the same. Uh, I don't know even know the right term for it. So you believe not only past but also future can exist
Well,
in the
because,
present. That's what I'm confused about.
well, their form, their manifestation exists within reference frame is the best phrase I can think of. You know, if you had children, your great 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 grandchildren would exist sometime in the 22nd century. Just like something from the past always exists in the past, something from the future always exists in the future. You have to look at time as if it were an actual dimension, like you're panning across back and forth across a page at a drawing. And so some things are on the right side and some things are on the left side, and you think you're somewhere in the middle, but the right and the left side are still part of the painting. So you have to see time that way in order to get certain of these, especially shamanic or relativistic physics ideas. You can't see time as just I'm taking one step after another. You have to see it as you are literally walking across a painting, and the
Okay.
painting is always there.
Okay, do you have to see it that way, or is it that way? I mean, that's kind of that's where I
I know
am at
this
this
is
point
weird
because
shit.
I understand. Yeah, because okay, so I really am trying to understand the whole spirit aspect of it. So okay, so if if spirits from the past exist in the same dimension as us, all around us, since the dawn of time, there's going to be an awful lot of spirits around us.
Potentially,
Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
But if you have an unedited connection across the time, you know, like if you know, with people talk expand your consciousness, people talk about expand your consciousness. It's very new agey sounding. You know, try to learn to see. You know, in the case of divination, you're trying to learn to see across the coils you haven't gotten to yet. You're trying to draw information from coils of time that you haven't reached yet. Mary Morning is okay. Mary Morning is more in this in the chat. She's kind of getting it. And the kind of spirits that okay. I'm sorry. I broke around in a circle on myself because
That's okay.
I'm trying to read the chat and have a conversation with you at the time. So
Right. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, people probably think I'm some kind of fucking idiot. I really don't care. All I'm trying to do is just understand understand it. You know, it's like
no, you bring a really good.
people on YouTube. The four words that they will not say. That you could put a fucking gun to their head. They will not say it. Is I don't know. And it's like that's kind of
Yeah.
where I'm at right now. I just don't know. I'm trying to understand this, and I have been reading some of the chat, and it's just kind of like, wow. Anyhow, whatever. So
No,
so
you're doing a very good job of the Socratic thing. You're
well, I'm just
dissecting
yeah,
you're
well,
dissecting the imagery very, very, sort of literally and linearly, and that gives a good comparison between the what way we normally see our daily life and the way the cosmos may be messing with us from outside. So you're doing it great.
okay. No, no, well, all right. Well, yeah. I mean, that was just a side point.
Yeah.
Okay. So if time is like a coil,
Uh huh.
uh, from your perspective,
Right.
and we are along this coil, and spirits are able to be perceived from the past.
Mm-hmm.
So does the spirit say exist infinitely, just forever it exists?
It always exists, and it's part of the painting. It's always manifest, and it's
Okay,
part of the
now you're all
coil.
right. Okay, so now you're throwing another analogy in. Okay,
Okay,
so
let me
what
try
is?
this. So,
No, no, it's okay. It's okay. Hold on, hold on, hold on.
okay, go
What
ahead.
is the painting? What does the painting encompass?
All of space, time, history, and dimension. The
Okay,
total
so
cosmos. The total
okay, so
cosmos
that's
across time.
okay. So that's what the painting exists
Yeah.
or represents. Okay, okay, good. I understand that. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue.
Okay. So the thing exists in the sense
Hmm.
that you could walk up and touch it
Hmm.
in its own reference frame. It exists on the painting where it is. It exists on the particular coils where it lived. And that's where it's real. That's where it could push rocks around. And most of the time, that's the only place it can push rocks around.
Hmm.
Uh, and until you get into some really weirdness, because you got all these coils wrapped around each other, and every once in a while, it's like Time Bandits, where like, oh, look, there's an anomaly here, and weird shit happened. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And then you can't explain that with a machine or science because, oh, that was an anomalous effect.
Okay.
And you can't prove it's like you said about magic earlier. You can't prove that because it just happened on its own and we can't duplicate it predictably.
Okay. All right. Okay. So do spirits exist eternally? Do ghosts or spirits or whatever you want to call them after you die, whatever happens to you, your spirits, these ancestor spirits that you were talking about earlier, do they exist infinitely?
Basically, from a relativistic point, everything exists eternally. The traffic jam you were in yesterday exists eternally because it's always there in that point in time. Does it, you got to get outside of time a little bit to see it that way.
Okay,
It was
we're
last Tuesday will always be last Tuesday.
right.
You can't erase it.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's linear time.
Right.
Right.
And so the funky stuff happens when these coils of what was linear events get a little too close to each other as the cycles come around. And sometimes what you call ghosts or spirits or, ancestral influences and ancestral veneration is almost entirely dependent on this. The properties of that information, energy, that event, that dynamic sort of weirdly bleed over onto the next coil. Or for your own purposes, you make it bleed over onto the next coil. And that's kind of what magic is all about, if you think about it.
Okay.
In a way. You're looking for a particular future and you want to navigate towards that future. Well, it's a lot easier to navigate towards that future if you can reach out to that next coil with energy and or with connection. What do you guys call them? We correspondences, and say, oh, I'm going to correspond to that next coil and I'm going to navigate
Okay.
to where I want on that next coil.
All right. Okay.
It,
What
it,
what, what, what was my question? I completely forgot my question.
whether these things are eternal.
Yes, but specifically, what was my question?
Oh, it seemed like you were asking if these spirits exist eternally.
Right, right. Yeah, that's what it was. Yes. So do these spirits exist eternally?
Yeah, because everything does.
Okay, okay. All right. So all these spirits exist eternally.
Yeah.
So let's how many people do you think have lived on the earth? For just the earth, because this is the scope of hopefully
Oh.
the scope of our conversation
Yeah.
at this point. So there's an infinite, literally almost an infinite number of spirits around us all the time. We're not
Hmm.
really an infinite. I'd say
A
I
couple
mean, I don't
hundred
know.
billion.
Maybe there's spirits that exist in not exist in the water, but maybe occupy that space. So these infinite spirits exist in our space and other spaces, other coils.
Hmm.
Okay, when someone dies, their spirit is, or part of their spirit is still here in a part of this coil, but another part of it. Uh, I don't know if your position on reincarnation, if you believe in reincarnation or not, or what do you think happens after to a spirit after we pass?
Well, physically, their little bricks of cells turn into other forms.
Mm-hmm.
The information that those little bricks, another shamanist explained it like Lego parts. You make something out of Legos, and then at some point you take all the bricks apart and the bricks still exist, and then they recombine, you build something else out of them. And that's basically what nature does with the conservation of energy. So the molecules, the energy, move on and make a new form, but the thing that was once made is still there last Tuesday. And so if you just look around with the most limited senses, you see things constantly changing forms. But each one of these things that is made also exists as part of everything that was made, everything that was ever made. And so in a way, the little bricks still carry forward a little bit of what they once were.
Okay, I kind of got lost in your analogy a little bit.
Yeah,
I thought
I kind of did too.
That's okay. I thought the bricks were the physical body.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess we should start laying some groundwork for some definitions.
Yeah.
What would
we're going after? This is a really big thing to go after from scratch, man.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, we were just really just trying to understand ghosts, but to understand ghosts, you kind of have to understand the spirit and the soul and then the body, blah blah blah. So I guess
the whole history of religion, all in one night.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So okay, so I guess so I don't know. I mean, would you divide the human into, like, let's say, a physical body, a soul body, and a spirit body?
Yeah, see, to me, a person is a creature, is a sequence. Oh my, you know what? That's not going to be answerable in any short time, because, even during your own lifetime, all the molecules in your body switch out. You think you're you, but the truth is you are a constantly changing process of molecules coming into your body. You breathe them in, you eat them, and you excrete, and you lose, cells and molecules.
Right.
So at no point are you exactly the same thing you were a couple of years ago or even an hour ago.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree with you, but I think that's a whole nother suitcase that we can keep packed for the moment.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand, like, what levels of a human you think that there are. Just because I think that because our conversation is so esoteric, it's really difficult to.
Welcome to the occult, huh?
Yeah, really. Well, I love stuff like this,
Yeah.
But so I'm just trying to understand what different levels of a person you would say there are. Like, you could probably, I mean, I'm sure if we wanted to, we could break down the soul into like several different parts and the spirit into different parts. But I'm just wondering, would you believe that there's a physical body, a soul, a spirit, and a mental body, and a ethereal body, an astral body? I mean, I'm just wondering what.
Okay, I get what you're at. Okay. The other day we were talking about my user graphic with the FMEI letters and the 4 circles interlaced.
Right.
That's it. That's the trick. That's not even the complete one. It gets horribly more complicated if I do the whole diagram. But that is how I see an event. That's how I see a creature. Is you are all of those things interacting with each other at the same time they're interacting with the environment. And so you can't isolate them. You can't reduce them without losing the whole. And so these literary words like soul, spirit, body, to me, they are part of a continuous scale of existence where everything is basically passing through each other. And yeah.
All right. Okay.
And this is why religions have dogma, so that they don't have to deal with that kind of thing all the time.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Let me just break it down for you what I believe, because
Okay, do that.
all right. So I think that we have a physical body. I think that we have a
Mm-hmm.
soul, and then we have a spirit. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that our body breaks down, our physical body breaks down, and then our spirit is kind of like what we have sort of collected through our life. And then we have a soul, which is essentially the essence of who we are and who we were before. And it is what carries on to the next life. But it's not like you don't carry like your old memories. You sort of carry, it's like a deeper level of person, like
Mm-hmm.
they quote unquote talk about soulmates,
Yeah.
that's kind of like what it is, but it's a deeper part where you don't, it's kind of like when you have those little glimpses of things that have happened in the past or whatever. So
Yep.
that's how I break it down.
Yep. Yep. And that's a good way to do it. And that that soul, that essence of yourself, is something that since ancient times, very ancient times, like Stone Age, people learn to attune themselves to and see the way that those souls, those spirits, continue to reverberate across time.
Mm-hmm.
Because information is really light, mass is really heavy, information is really light, and you could say that information, especially the essence of something that was really intense, like a person's consciousness, is pretty good at skipping across the coils and may continue to have relationships with other things that are skipping across the coils. And so that kind of like twin flames or soul partners thing seems to be an effect where two things that were once tightly related continue to be related outside of the reference frame of their bodies and may actually interact with and influence future bodies. And I think that's what people mean by reincarnation, is that bits of the essence of something from the past and sometimes the future, depending on your theories about Nikola Tesla and Leonardo da Vinci and his helicopters and stuff, maybe sometimes things reverberate into the past and people get ideas that shouldn't have come to them in their point in history. But outside of a person's lifetime, they may still continue to interact with the environment. So I agree with you. I just think of it in a different way.
Okay. All right. That's okay. So I would say that the spirit essentially lives on for a certain period of time and then dissipates. It just kind of goes away. The soul is the only thing that actually lives again. So in that way, I believe that reincarnation is the soul that lives on. The spirit is something that dissipates after a period of time, and that is, that explains, quote unquote, like the phenomenon of ghosts and spirits and such. Because
Mm-hmm.
if spirits and ghosts lived eternally, that means that we would have all these spirits around us all the time, and that I just can't believe. I can't believe that would just exist eternally. I don't see it that way. But again, that's just my theory. Just like you're sharing your theory with me,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of my theory about it.
Yeah, and if you think about it, no, and I agree with you to some extent. If you think about it, if you're trying to access the consciousness of your late great grandmother who you actually knew, you have a lot of connections to that person, and so there's more coherence to that connection. If you were trying to pick some particular ancestor 5,000 years ago and sort them out from the crowd, they would be just a tiny ripple in the echo of that time period. And so there is a little, and people who have researched shamanic practices have actually noticed that there's kind of a limit to how far an echo goes before it kind of blends into the background. And when you go out and try to access things, either across time or space, whatever, when you're trying to use your magic, there's a limit to how far you can tune in the radio to something that is so distant in the past or so distant in the distance that you don't have any way to tell one thing from another. And so as far as like you were talking about spirit, totally agree with that.
But it sounds like, okay, but for using your example for myself, I believe that radio station no longer exists. Like you could sit there and try to tune to it, it just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, there's no
right. That spirit exists for a certain period of time, and then that's it. There's
yeah,
nothing. So I don't believe that you can even try to tune into a spirits from 5,000 years ago, because there's just nothing there. That's how I perceive it.
yeah. I think at some point there's more signal noise than there is signal, and so no like radio crystal could possibly pick it out unless the thing itself had some particular property that resonated with you that made it unnaturally real. Because people do get ancestral spirits from the extreme past, but not because they could tune into it, but because there was some spontaneous connection that is totally occultic or totally unpredictable, and they just happen sort of to meet with this one little lonely signal that just happened to resonate with them by accident or chaos. But that's an extremely rare thing, and you can't just say, I'm going to go out and talk to my 5,000 times great-grandfather today and pick the exact one, because you don't even know what to tune for. It's lost in the noise. So I agree with you about that, basically, although there are anomalies where people get a contact or a spiritual ancestral influence from something particular that was farther deep in the past than should be possible. And that's part of the, reality isn't a perfect curve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see. Channeling. Mary Morning wants to hear about channeling.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah. Channeling changes the rules of the game depending on how good you are at it. Just like divination changes the rules of the game depending on how good you are at it. Most of the channeling that is done in fraudulent circumstances. If they've actually got laws against it in England. You can't pretend to channel somebody's grandmother. It's illegal to say you can do that because it's just too anomalous. So some people are better than others at channeling. It's a talent. And the ones who are honest about their talent will tell you this may not work. In shamanism, you use channeling in a lot of different ways, because like invoking and evoking is a kind of channeling. Divination is a kind of channeling in reverse, because you're channeling the future. So channeling just means that information energy is flowing through you from the environment, and you are not restricting what's flowing through you to what's happening around you in the present moment. And so you can get some really weird, really cool effects from channeling independent of the present moment. And I've got a million stories about that. Some of them are pretty weird. Some of them still are pretty weird to me, even having done them. But so
yeah, do you have your own channel? Like if people wanted to go and check out your stuff, I know you have a YouTube page, just because you have to have one to be able to comment. But do you actually like make videos and stuff?
I don't. I'm just this old guy who's done this stuff, and I enjoy watching videos like yours on YouTube, and I can just about manage to type comments technically.
Right. I know it takes some work. I understand, but I mean, anyhow, I was just going to post a link if you did have one, because it sounds like, especially like Mary is very interested in learning more about your perspective. So, I mean, from my own point of view, I think that channeling is more. I think it is 99% influenced by the person who's doing the channeling. I think that that's about it. And
Yeah,
I agree with you, Animist. I think that most people who do it are either kidding themselves or kidding people for money. I don't believe that it's possible, and that's just my opinion. I think that if you were able to actually channel something, you would be channeling a spirit of something that just recently existed, or something like that. and whatever it says is probably going to be complete nonsense or whatever, because it's the makeup of that particular person's life that just ended. So I don't believe
And
that. Mhm.
channeling is about like saying ghosts. There are so many ways to do it that
Mhm.
you'd have to break it down into a dozen different categories to make sense out of which ones do what. So that's a wonderful conversation to have, because, every time I go out let's say I go out into the forest and I'm in trance,
Mhm.
there is information from the forest that is flowing through me, just like information from your environment is always flowing through you. And it is possible to become conscious of certain parts of that information that that are from the environment rather than from your own deliberate processes. And this is how like ancient hunters found food, is a practical skill.
You mean they didn't actually just track the animal?
No, not all the time. I mean, that's being good at that is good. I mean, it's good to be able to track animals. It's better to know where they're going to be, so you don't have to follow them all through the landscape. It's good to know where they're going to be and just go there and wait for them. And
Yeah, but that would. I'm kidding, but I'm thinking it would probably be based more upon actual empirical evidence. I think it's like a water source, a typical range of its, domain.
right.
Tracking an animal, understanding how they move, even herdsman. I'm thinking that they probably relied upon that more than they did on connecting with the animal. But that's just my opinion.
Well, that is part of being familiar with your environment.
Right.
It's far more reliable it's far more reliable to work with what you would call the hard science of an environment and say, oh, well, they water here, they've got a salt lick there, blah blah blah, there's this seasonal migration. But as a training experience, or as a perceptual exercise, or as a perceptual exercise, or if you're moving into new territory,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of these skills came as a result of nomadism. If you can, this is going to turn into religious terminology, but if you can commune with the spirit of deer and look for the spirit of deer on an unknown landscape, then you can find deer. And this is a physical, overt effect. And that happens. I've done that multiple times. But that's not your first choice. Your first choice is you plant berry seeds in the ground, and next year the berries grow up and you stay there and eat them. But
Yeah.
in
Okay. All right.
in more extreme circumstances, you resort to more esoteric arts to survive. And so the esoteric practice becomes something you train with.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's see. Ray says, "I'm curious to know if you have ever been ridden." I'm assuming he's talking about spirit riding.
Shamanist. I'm walking around with a dozen invocation effects all the time. Old shamanist. So I'm walking around with a bunch of invocation effects all the time, and you could call that ridden. And whether or not the human still even has full control of the situation becomes questionable, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, Ray, are you talking about like a complete envelopment of a person, like someone would do during say, a voodoo trance? Or do you mean like riding a spirit or having a spirit ride you and you're still conscious of it? Maybe you could define it a little more.
Yeah, he's talking about possessed.
Oh,
And
possession? Oh, okay.
yeah, and that's a funny thing, because that's a religious, dogmatic, in a way, point of view, because to Christianity or Islam, housing a spirit in your body, being possessed by it and letting it control your actions would be considered a failure or a weakness or an evil. But to an animist or a shamanist, if what I need to be right now is the bear, then being the bear is better than being the human. And so I would absolutely invite that relationship. Or being the cat. If I need to be dreamy, if I need to seek wild inspiration, then being the cat is the better experience at the moment.
Hmm. Okay.
And
So,
yeah, that happens a lot with shamanists.
okay. So yeah, okay. So it sounds like he was talking about complete development of a person. Okay. And
Yeah,
Mary says, I think if you have fear, you invite that in. It depends on your beliefs. Yeah. I mean, fear is a self-destructive force. I mean, it just kind of. I mean, obviously, fear is good to have, you know, but I think that you can't allow fear to overwhelm you. I mean, it's like anything you're afraid of doing, you can still do it. It's not like fear goes away. You just go through the fear,
yeah,
like if you've ever had to speak before an assembly of, like a huge number of people and you're really afraid, it's like you just go through the fear and you do it. But if you allow the fear to overcome you and not do it, then essentially you've given into the fear. I mean, that's how I perceive it.
yeah. And fear is a good issue because one of the fears is that you'll be overwhelmed.
Mm.
And the best, literally, it's a science fiction reference, but the best example of a perspective on fear is the Bene Gesserit litany against fear. And it's basically, fear is the mind killer. It is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will let it pass through me. And when it has gone, I will look in the path where it came. And only I will remain. And that exercise is used in very physical ways in training people like me, that if you're afraid, then you will become unbalanced because you won't be able to commune properly and you won't be able to let go of the communion properly. And you basically become either schizophrenic or extremely neurotic or dysfunctional in some other way because you can't flow in and out of that state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so a lot of what happens with training people, in traditional animistic, shamanistic environments involves a lot of really horrible child endangerment by modern standards. So like, at one point I'm 9 years old and my father and I are sailing on the Great Lakes on Michigan Huron, basically the biggest freshwater lake in the world. And there is a huge storm front coming in at us. And there's two of us on this 25-foot sailboat, and we're looking at a storm front that's going to create waves 10 feet high, just basically because that's what happens in the spring on the Great Lakes. And he asked his 10-year-old son, so should we turn around, turn on the motor and run back to port, or should we sail into the storm and meet the storm? And I say, I think we can make it. And so because child endangerment is fun. Raise a Village asks why I'm laughing about child endangerment. It's because I grew up with it. But anyway, we literally rigged the boat as fast as we could for storm rigging, and we sailed directly into a major thunderstorm on the Great Lakes. One man and his little boy, and we met Thor. We met the storm. And the point was, if we were worthy, if we were good, if we were skilled in the physical sense and spiritually, and as people who knew how to combine with nature, then we'd live. And if not, we'd die. And if we died, it meant we weren't worthy to move through the storm. And I like that little moment, because that was the last time I was really afraid of something. Because after going through that storm, it was like, oh, you just have to disassociate yourself from your separation from the environment and let yourself be part of the environment, because that's the only way to move through it successfully. And so that's the horrible way that shamanists almost kill their children.
Okay. So
after that, combining with pure spirit wasn't a challenge.
Hold on a second.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's
Matt.
Okay. Okay, so your father purposely put you in danger? I mean, you had a choice of either going back to port or actually putting yourself in danger.
Yep.
So you and your father decided to purposely put yourself in danger.
Yep.
That doesn't make any sense.
Oh, but the question is, what comes out the other side, man? What comes out the other side is something that can act without reticence, without reserve. which means the next time there's an emergency, you already know how to act without holding back. And this is typical of certain clans of Norsemen in this modern day. People still do this.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, it's just, I mean, for myself, I wouldn't want to put myself in danger unless there was some kind of, unless I absolutely had to. You know, I think
Right.
that overcoming fear is, first of all, it's a justified fear. It's a necessary fear. It's something that happens, and then you have to overcome it. You have to go through it. And I think to trying to sort of manufacture it or sort of play with death, I think is not. I don't think that. I mean, this is just my personal opinion. I just don't see that as really as a benefit. I see that as a, if anything, as more of a subtraction from it, because it's kind of like, oh, can I endure this pain? Can I go through this? And so you're sort of,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds more like a trial that you're forcibly putting yourself through.
Yeah, it is. It's life by trial. And people are talking about mountain climbing or mountain biking, and this is usually something that adults do to challenge themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But in certain cultures, and if you look at the trials of adolescence of some traditional cultures, they're really dangerous, and you accept a certain loss rate, and you know that the ones who make it through are going to be good at it. And so, having gone through that storm experience, then for me to channel like bear spirit, if there's an emergency and I have to protect someone or I have to stop someone from doing something bad, which I've done a certain amount of professionally in my life, I know that I can move into bear spirit and move out of bear spirit without fearing it and without creating hesitancy. And so in terms of modern American legal definitions of how to raise a child, it's horrible. And that's why I laugh at it, because I went through that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, okay, but for example, like let's say using a common example, let's say you're a young boy who's growing into manhood. So you're around 12, 13 years old. You're basically becoming a man. This is probably in most cultures, this would be at a time where you would have to go through some kind of an initiation or some kind of a welcoming or some kind of a transition from childhood into adulthood. So you would go through, like, let's say, some kind of a ritual where you would be burned with insects, or you would be circumcised, or maybe you have to go into a cave and live for X amount of days on nothing but whatever you can, or you would actually have to go through some kind of a trial, some kind of a fearful thing, as opposed to like somebody who takes a 12, 13-year-old child and says, okay, we could either chase that bear or we can leave it alone. Let's go chase the bear and see what happens. And then, you get mauled to your death. I mean, you see what I'm saying? There's a difference between a trial going through that's kind of like a controlled environment where you're actually transitioning into, let's say, out of childhood into manhood. But here's a situation where you're actually putting yourself in an unnecessary danger. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I totally know what you mean, and it's a cultural norm, because the person, the person who finds these situations,
Mm-hmm.
and Ray's is trying to feel sorry for me, and thank you, Ray's. I am not the child of a gentle civilization or a gentle tribal tradition. That's just a fact. And all of the people who put me through these things or who taught me these things were themselves survivors of that same tradition. And so they knew it was possible to survive all this stuff. And there are certain safeguards that are put in place in a given situation, because, the person you're with, like I was sailing, like in this storm example, I'm sailing with my father. This guy grew up doing this stuff. He grew up boating solo. And so he knew how to deal with the storm. But the point of the exercise was to see if I knew how to deal with the storm. And so it's a higher risk gamble, but it's a gamble by people who have already played in those waters to some
Okay.
extent.
Oh, okay. So it sounds like it was still a controlled environment. So he knew the outcome, but he knew that
Well,
you did not know the outcome. Is that
yeah, well,
correct?
he knew
Okay.
he had confidence in his own abilities, but in order for the situation to work out right, I had to be able to perform my part.
Mm-hmm.
So it's confidence in himself and confidence in his own child, in this, in what he saw before him. And he did this a lot, and all of my family did this. Like, okay, one of my cousins, when he was in Norway, he was like 14 years old, and uh, and and at 14, they gave him a rifle and said, "Go hunt a deer. Don't come back until you can bring us food." And put a 30-30 rifle in his hand, and he had to go out alone as a young teenager and hunt a deer. Now,
Wow. And did he
yeah,
actually get one? How did
yeah,
he bring? How did he drag it back?
by force of will. um,
Wow.
he's also a big guy. I mean, this guy is six as an adult. He's 6'7" and 280 pounds.
Yeah, because a dead buck or dead stag weighs a lot, like I think
Yeah,
like almost
but
200 pounds.
what he said after describing the story of that particular trial was, I think they were pretty much watching me from the hilltop a mile away through binoculars just to make sure I didn't meet a polar bear or something.
Hmm.
But as far as his point of view it was up to him to perform that test.
Right. I mean,
And if
it's kind of like I'm sorry. Were you done?
oh, I was just no, go ahead. I'll get back to it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I was just saying like for example, some cultures where like let's say like let's say they meet maybe they meet some kind of a spirit or something, and what it is it's usually somebody of the tribe that dresses up in a particular costume or whatever, and then
Yeah, yeah.
acts this spirit, and then what happens is like let's say the young child meets that spirit, but I mean my whole point is that the whole thing is sort of engineered to see how the child may not understand exactly what's going on, but the adults sort of know what's going on. So it's still a controlled environment.
Yeah, it's semi-controlled, and some cultures are more controlled than others. I happen to come from a rather risk-embracing culture. I mean, this is the culture that created, nomadic Arctic hunter-gatherers and Vikings,
I see.
and were
And what's
professional soldiers, and these
okay?
people were expected to risk their life for the good of the tribe. And
So
so
this is
it isn't.
so this is a tribe that still exists today.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
oh yeah,
okay.
and in various places. And I'm from a mixture of backgrounds, so part of me is from the circumpolar tradition where there are always polar bears, and if you're going to let a child out of your sight at all, they have to be able to hold a high-powered hunting rifle and use it to defend themselves from polar bears.
Right.
You don't
And
get to go through 20 years of coddling before you face deadly danger. It's always there.
right. And which city is this or town?
It's across the world at this point. I mean, we're kind of spread out. And the other part of my background is the Cliff people, and the Swabi, which are the people who gave you the guys who wiped out Roman legions and were berserkers, and definitely professional soldiers. And so they were planning on risking their life in extreme circumstances.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's just the nature of the people. They're both very, very rough, I should say, extreme people in extreme environments for extreme purposes.
Okay. And I'm sorry. What country is this?
Various countries, because of mobility. Well, the Sami are across Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Russia, across the Arctic, and then the cliff people had migrated down from Finland into the Alps, at the time of the Roman Empire. And later, some of them ended up in Spain. Some of them ended up back up in Scandinavia. Some of them ended up back in Russia, which made the Cold War really interesting, and World War II really interesting, because you had people who were basically from the same background and training and way of life shooting at each other for fun.
Okay. So I guess what city did you grow up in, if you don't mind saying?
No, they moved me around a lot. I was born somewhere in the countryside of northern Michigan. Oh, well, I was born in a hospital. They did manage to dig a tunnel out of the garage and get my mother to the hospital because the snow had drifted over the top of the house.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. For some reason, I thought you were born in like Sweden or Norway or something, or Finland. For some reason, I was under that impression.
I'm third generation from there. My parents were born in the United States, and I was born in the United States. But my grandparents on one side were from Scandinavia, and on the other side, ironically enough, my one grandmother was actually English. She was an English blue blood, extremely civilized, but her husband was was from a line of, basically Swiss soldiers. And so it's a weird confluence of things that existed at one point in history, 2,000 years ago, and then re-met in America. So that's just my personal story. There's a lot of people like that, because people emigrated from a certain place in the old world and found the familiar place in the new world where they lived. So there's a whole bunch of Scandinavians up in Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. And so, things that had once diverged sort of joined back together and found that their values weren't that different from the old days.
Okay. All right. Well, interesting. Yeah. I don't know why I was under that impression, but okay.
Yeah. Well, it's because, it's one of those old ways things. When your family is carrying on the old ways, it's very easy to sound like, because I grew up in similar circumstances here that people were growing up, hundreds of years ago in Europe. The two aren't that different. They're just in a different place.
Interesting. Yeah.
But the process is the same.
Yeah. Interesting. Huh. All right. Well, let's see. Ray's still. We had like 4 people in here now.
Yeah, he's talking about child soldiers, and that's a whole different issue. They train you for it as a child. Hopefully, you don't have to defend your village or whatever as a child, but you could.
Yeah. So Ray's made a $2 donation. Thank you so much, Ray's. I really appreciate that. He did that in the super chat. Super chat is it's kind of a cool thing. I mean, I usually don't get them, but they're nice when they happen. It's weird because you have to have like over 1,000 subs, I think, to be able to get super chat enabled. But it's kind of nice.
Yeah, I really appreciate Ray's input because he's been giving us a good sort of check on the difference between weird occultism and modern ethics. And I'm obviously a product of former generations,
Yeah, well, I mean, I can understand. Other cultures, they do have this sort of. In America, at least, we don't really have any kind of, unless you're Jewish or maybe some other culture, you don't really have any kind of a transition from boyhood into manhood. I mean, women, they sort of automatically have one. That's when they have their period. That's kind of an obvious transition from being a young girl to a woman who can have children. But for men, we don't have anything unless you have your bar mitzvah. But other than that, we don't have anything that shows a transition from a young boy into manhood. I think mainly because, first of all, we've kind of neglected the male psyche in the Western culture. We've set it off to its side. It just said it's just an unfortunate a handover from our ancient past when we actually needed to be warriors.
Yeah.
You know?
And that has been commented. I've seen comments on that about as a kind of a psychological weakness in American culture for, I don't know, 30 or 40 years. They've said there's nothing to give a young man the confidence that he has become a man or the identity of a man. And so there's this weird sliding scale, and it makes for less responsible young men, because no one says, here are the virtues that you're supposed to follow as a man. Right. They say, oh, well, just figure it out. Watch some action movies.
Right. Yeah. And then the extent of the male experience is like, oh, well, you were a warrior, and men are just warriors. It's like, I think there's a little more to it than just that. And then the ironic thing, like they're talking about, for example, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman's a wonderful. I like the figure of Wonder Woman, but it's like what makes women powerful is the fact that they become like men. It's like, what the hell? It's like men don't become powerful by, acting like women.
Becoming more man. Yeah.
No. I mean, they don't become powerful by acting like women. You know what I mean? I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but I mean, so
totally. I'm right there with you.
Okay, you know what I'm saying then. Okay, yeah. So
well, because my sisters were raised not in as dangerous a way as I was, but they were also of that people, and so they could go pretty primal at a moment's notice if necessary. And they were big girls. These are not small people. And at one point, one of them had not one but two high schools afraid of her, because anyone who wanted to pick on the berserker girl was going to get really, really messed up.
Yeah, but again, right there. That's what I'm talking. That's what I'm talking.
Yeah, she was definitely she was definitely a woman, but if the situation went a certain way, she could totally go flip-flop and go crazy on your ass. And to us, that's sexy in a strange way. It's like, oh, well, don't piss her off. She'll put a battle axe in her head. That makes her more beautiful because she'll keep you honest.
Right. Yeah, but that's exactly what I'm saying. Is there's this concept, okay, there's this idea that women, okay, can become powerful like men. So what I was getting at earlier was this idea that the way that women become more powerful is by acting like men. Mm-hmm. But we don't have the other thing around. We don't have the other way around.
Right.
Nobody looks at a boy who's like exhibiting feminine traits and saying, "Oh, look at that! He's becoming powerful." We don't have that concept. Here. You know what I mean? So it just to me, it's like what we do is we castigate men off to the side and say, okay, you dumb, stupid warriors or whatever, we don't really need you anymore. But in the same concept in our society, here we are touting, oh, well, this woman can be a powerful leader in business and walk on her own and do all the stuff. It's kind of like, okay, well, that's what a man does. Why don't you praise him for being that way?
Yeah. Yeah, and you know what? There's an answer to that in the mythology of Norse culture, which is most of what we're talking about at this point. We're not really talking about shamanism. If you look at Odin as a god figure, the way that Odin got his powers was by studying the women's arts, the magic, the divination, the witchcraft. And Raise a Village already said that. And so actually the way that you get power as a man is, in a way, in Taoism, they say, holding to the mystic female, by developing your subtle perception, your stealth, your tracking, your ability to see the needs and meet the needs of others. And in traditional Norse culture, they actually do have that model where the big strong man who can also be kind to a child or a dog or whatever is considered more manly, and that includes developing what were typically feminine, mystical, and magical arts, divination, herbalism. And Odin himself was famous for having these feminine traits and practicing these feminine sensitivities. And the problem is that in the modern age, they didn't bring that aspect forward very well. They let that drop because they had an all-male god.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. Yes, I agree with you. That's an interesting story about the Norse and about Odin. Yeah, and I guess so, but I really feel like that's separate. You know what I mean? I think that that's completely separate from our culture today. I don't see that. I don't even see that sort of encouraged. You know what I mean?
No, it
I don't
isn't.
see that. Yeah, yeah.
And that is the contamination of the monotheistic Middle Eastern death and tax cults, is they stripped the mysticism away from men and turned them into little, factory worker automatons with no souls. And that is the thing about those death and tax cults that offends me the most, is that they have taken away the other side of the man. Because each of us, whatever little parts we have, each of us have both of those sides that need to be in balance. And monotheism and the Industrial Revolution did everything they could to profit by stripping the souls out of their male workers, because they were useful as worker robots. And likewise, they took the strength out of women by telling them to stay home and make more babies for the empire. And it's a horrible thing.
I don't think that that's necessarily. I don't necessarily see that as a result of capitalism or the death and taxes cult. I don't necessarily see that. I see that more of a. I would say something that's happened in the past 100 years or so. It seems, because I think like back in World War II, World War I, even during the Industrial Revolution and all of that, I think that men were appreciated, and I think men were understood. Um, Nowadays, though, I think it's kind of I think in the past maybe 100 years or so, it seems like we've been going downhill, where we actually emphasize the feminine aspects, but we neglect the male aspects. And then the male aspects that we do encourage, we only encourage in the feminine. We don't encourage that in the masculine. You see what I'm saying? So there's a definite imbalance on males being able to show and develop their male aspects.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay if women do it, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, well, you want the beast to be strong, but you also want it to be tame. If you're the ruler. And it's a bad ruling, without doubt, because they created, a ton of homophobia, a ton of sexism that literally didn't exist in the prior eras. I mean, Abraham Lincoln was openly bisexual.
Who is they? Who is they?
Okay. The current, at the time, standards of what was considered a good way to run a society. And that's a matter of basically popular philosophy among influential families or influential people, influential academics, and it emerges from the society. The society itself tries to make itself something by experimenting with new things or eliminating old things. And so you have this evolving ethic.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think I understand what you're saying. But yeah, see, I don't see it that way. I don't see it as a conscious push. I see it as a societal norm. And that's kind of like what has been happening. So our societal norm has been moving away from encouraging the masculine aspects of males, but yet encouraging it and actually pushing it in the feminine. which to me is a result of cultural norms, not necessarily any other entity. I think it's just a, like I said, it's a societal push.
Yeah, it's a combination of forces, and I think it's an overcompensation that you're seeing. During from World War I, which is so much about be the man, serve the empire, live or die, as a cog in a wheel, an industrial worker. So it had this very limited view of manhood, which became a very overbearing vision of manhood in society. It overexpressed itself in society in, say, 30s, 40s, 50s. And then since then, society was trying to rebalance the influence of women in society, or the influence of the feminine aspect. And it seems like, from what you say and what some other people say about feminazis, I don't know this word, I don't know these people, they don't act like that around me, that we've got a little bit of a pendulum swing going back. And in a funny way, it's because people in favor of feminine qualities have become over male aggressive themselves, to the point where they're throwing the balance off.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
They're trying to get revenge.
Yeah, but I mean, again, like you had just mentioned, but that is that power dynamic, that encouragement of that masculine force. You know what I mean? It's just a bizarre thing to me. It's like women are supposed to become independent and strong and be able to do this, and they can do everything that a man can do and all this stuff. And it's like, but you're you're calling that the quality that you would want to strive for, but it's not the quality that you will allow to be nurtured and expressed in men. Because if we are, you know what I mean? To me, it just doesn't make any. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that's because they're sexist. What you got is female sexists, and so their view is just as warped as male sexist. But because they have this history of women not being able to vote, or women not given equal pay in the past, or women not having equal access to certain opportunities, they are using those historical factors to fuel their sexism. And they're just basically sick minds, because they're not looking for a balance. They're looking to be dominant. They're looking to be overwhelming, and they're looking to be Nazis.
Yeah.
They just happen to be at a position where they've got some leverage to say, oh, but people with uteruses have the right to be sexist and superior and domineering Nazis, and they're just as sick as the people who thought the other way. It's just the other side of that coin.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I think maybe I just can't express myself tonight. I'm just not getting. I'm just not expressing myself accurately.
Well, this is the first time we've had a conversation, really a serious conversation, and we're talking about some very serious stuff, some very deep stuff, highly dependent on your background experience. So I think you've done great. That I could even understand what your point of view was at all enough to try to answer was impressive.
Yeah. No, I enjoy. No, I enjoy conversations like this. I enjoy talking about pretty deep topics and discussions. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that's one of the great things is I can go online, basically invite somebody who lives, halfway around the world from me. Of course, you don't live half a world away.
Halfway across the continent.
Yeah, right. Yeah, quarter of the world away. And we can sit there and talk about like the nature of a soul. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that says well about somebody's background.
Yeah, because I think
given the enormous variety of source material that we've developed our terminology from, you spend the first while just trying to figure out what you mean by soul.
Right. Exactly.
It's like, what does that word mean to you?
Right. Exactly. But I mean, it's I think that's one of the great things about the internet is that we can do that. So,
Yeah.
but it's already 8 p.m. My time. I started at 6. I meant to
Oh
only go
wow.
for an hour. That's okay. It was fun. It was a good conversation. I only meant to
Yeah.
go for an hour. We ended up going for 2 hours, but
Yeah.
it was a good conversation. So I don't mind. It was definitely worth it.
Well,
So,
thanks for letting me be a guest on your channel, man.
oh yeah, well you earned it, Animus, for supporting me on Patreon. So I mean,
Yeah.
this hangout is for my Patreons, because I did the Saturday one, but the Saturday one turned into sort of like a hangout where anybody can kind of come on. So I wanted to make Wednesdays just for the Patreon. So yeah, no, it was fun. It was fun, Animus. I really enjoyed talking with you, and yeah. People like you, and I don't mean that disparagingly, but I mean people like you who have very intricate and esoteric, uh, subjective theories about things are just really fascinating to me. But part of it is just trying to kind of like get a grasp and understand it. Just because the way that my mind works in a
Mm.
very like connecting fashion. So I sort of I have to completely get almost like a gestalt picture of everything, and then I can begin to sort of process and understand it. So if I have like only a piece of it, it's difficult for me to really understand it.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
You
know,
want the whole.
yeah, yeah, and it's difficult, but I think you were patient with me, and I appreciate that. So thanks.
Well, I enjoy the process because every
Yeah,
time you go through that process, you have to look at yourself, and you have to look and say, is that really what I think? Is that really how I got here? And that's
right.
all. That Socratic process is always good.
Yeah,
So I had a lot of fun. It's fun to
yeah,
try to explain it, especially to try to explain spiritual stuff in a technical language like English.
yes. Yes. All right. Well, cool. Well, Mary says maybe you guys can discuss multi-dimensional universes next time.
Yeah, yeah, I could discuss that. I'm not sure
Sure.
if
Sure.
it'll make any sense to anyone.
Yeah. Really. Yeah. So, all right. Well, hey, thanks, Animus. And if you
Thank
want to
you.
join me on Saturdays, you're welcome to do that too. Maybe we could talk
I'll
about it then.
I'll I'll try to make it.
All right. All right. Thanks, all.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night. All right. Thanks,
Have a
Animus.
good night.
Good night.
Bye bye.